All right, so this is the first video. We're going to build this little robot here. It's going to get you set up on how to work with assemblies in Onshape. We'll talk about documents, folders, and all those sorts of things. Very introductory part right at the beginning, and then we're going to get right to work working with mates and inserting parts and so forth. Okay, so that is the plan for today. Hopefully you've already set up your student account. That was in the previous video. And we're going to do a little tour of what the Onshape user interface looks like. We're going to sign into our Onshape account. So when you first start Onshape, this is a brand new account. It's never seen anything. This is the basis of the Onshape program when you first open it. So this is a brand spanking new account. There are two kinds of things in an Onshape account. There are folders and there are documents, and we're going to explore those real quick. There's a little browser, some browser help up here that's going to be relatively important. You can click on owned by me, recently opened, created by me. We haven't created anything yet in this account, shared with me, labels, public, where you can go see all of the publicly available documents. Okay, so I'm going to go back up here to owned by me. You can create things. The two important ones are documents and folders. Okay, I'm going to create a folder first, and I'm going to call this OSK lessons. Okay, and when I do that, you can see there's a new folder, and it works kind of what you'd expect, just like on your computer. And I can open this and there's nothing in there, okay? Or I can go back. I can also create documents. And so we're gonna call this one OSK Lesson 1. Now, I would like you to do the same thing. So you're gonna go, if you need to pause, that's fine. But you're going to go create document OSK Lesson 1 and hit create. Go try that now if you haven't done it. This, and I'm going to get rid of my picture because you don't really need to see me anymore. This is what an Onshape document looks like. Here's the brief tour. A brand new document will have by default, a part studio and an assembly. A more complex project that you're working on is going to end up with a whole bunch of these tabs. You'll end up with lots of assemblies and lots of parts, okay? But that's fine. Up on the top here, you can see Onshape logo will allow you to go to documents. So if you click on it, you'll end up back in your documents. If I click on this, I will go back to edit, or double click that, and I will go back to editing this, okay? On the top here, you'll see a toolbar. Now we're currently in a part studio, and I can tell because the tab down here at the bottom is set to part studio. You can see it has a context menu. There's a whole bunch of cool things having to do with part studios and sketches up here. We will get to those later. We're going to actually ignore part studios at first. I am going to click on assembly and watch how this changes, right? So we have insert and we have a bunch of mates options and stuff. We'll get into each one of these in a bit. On the left-hand side here, in an assembly, you'll see instances, and an assembly is a collection of parts and or other sub-assemblies. And so you can put all sorts of things together in here, and these can get pretty complicated. So you should be seeing instances, insert, and this stuff. That means that you're actually in an assembly. We're going to go back and look in Onshape one more time. So I've clicked the Onshape, and now I'm back in this upper level root of my folder. And we're going to do one thing. We're going to click on public. Now, public, these are shared by tens of thousands of users. There's a ton of these files up here, but we're going to search, and we're going to actually search for OSK23 library, right? Right up here in the search box. Onshape with Kevin 23 library. You're going to do a search, and that should bring up this file, OSK23 library. So one of the interesting things that you can do is you can actually highlight this so it's blue, right click and hit labels. And this will allow me over here on the right-hand side to create a new label. So OSK23 library, the details have been brought up. You're going to go down, create new label, and I want you to call it OSK23, okay? And hit create. And so you can see it's now given that file a label. You're going to find this super useful and super important to be able to find this and keep referencing it, okay? Because we're going to use a bunch of parts in this library to create our project. Great. I'm going to go back to owned by me, okay? And I'm going to click on OSK lesson 1. All right. So I'm in an assembly. You can see it down here. I can see the assembly thing up here. And we're going to start right off the bat by inserting a part. So we're going to hit the insert. The insert parts and assemblies dialog box here arrives, and you sort of start at the top and you work your way down to the bottom. You can insert things from the current document. We don't have anything yet, so we don't need to worry about that, but you can click on other documents, and we're going to use that in a sec. But you're going to actually come over and click on standard content, and you can see that there are nuts and bolts. This is where you find fasteners and such. Okay, so current document, standard content, and then other documents. Now, in other documents, you should end up with a directory that kind of looks like this. If you've been using Onshape already, you may have other stuff. So you might need to, if there's a home button up here, you should click it. And what you're going to do is click on OSK23. And this is, that label has allowed you to get a shortcut to the library that we're going to use. OSK23 library. And so here is the library of parts we're going to use. These are all parts from GoBuilda. We're going to start with a part that's in a part studio. The other thing in here are assemblies. I'm going to click on assemblies real quick just to take a little tour. You can find there's some wheels and a motor, and we're going to use a lot of this stuff later. Now I'm going to go back here and click on Part Studios, and we're going to insert a specific part. And it starts with 1201 down here. It's called a quad block. And we're going to click once with the left mouse button. So I clicked on the left mouse button, and I'm going to drag this over here. See that dot here where the mouse is hovering over? Be over to the right of that dot for me. Now I'm going to left click once. So that I've just left clicked, and that is places things, selects things. That's what the left button is for. Now you're going to go, there are two controls up here on the dialog, the green check mark and the red check mark. Hit the green check mark, that'll okay all of this. Let's play with the mouse for a sec. There are 3 buttons on your mouse. There's a left button, a right button, and the scroll wheel, which is also a button. Okay, you'll be able to click that. So I'm going to start by clicking and dragging. So I'm going to call that a right drag. So I'm holding down the right mouse button and moving this around. You can see I can rotate my part. And that's, you're going to do this a lot. So right drag is super important. That's what it does. And as I move the mouse around, I can rotate the part to get it just how I want it. Okay. Now, I've now led up on the right button. I can also click and drag the center button, and then that will allow me to pan, right? So I can pan like this. I can move it up and down, or I'm up, down, left, right. I let go of that center button, or the scroll wheel, let go of the scroll wheel, right click and drag the right button. So that's awesome. There you go. Now I've now released all of those, and I can actually try a couple of other functions. If I hover over something, see how it highlights it? If I'm hovering over a part and I press and release the right mouse button, I'll get a menu. See that menu? So that's a context menu that allows you to do things with the part. If you didn't want that, or if you want to deselect stuff, there's a notion in Onshape of clicking on nothing. So I'm coming over here to nothingness. There's nothing over here. And if I left click once, it will clear the selection and also clear that menu. Okay. So left click, just one click and let go, released all of that. Okay. Now I can also come over and left click on a part. So this is a part that we've inserted. I can left click it, and you can see that it got highlighted. And also notice over here in instances, it has been highlighted over here. You can drag this little bar over if you want to see the whole part number, or if the names are too big. There we go. I have selected that part. And now if I hit the right mouse button over here, it will bring up a context menu that's specific to that part. Now I'm going to click one more time on this, and I just want to show you. Look at the mouse. There's a pointer and there's a number. The number means that I currently have one item selected. Turns out you can select multiple items, and it will tell you how many items you have selected there. And if you want to clear those selections, if you want to unselect everything, go find nothing, left click once. Right drag, scroll drag are the two things that are going to move things around for you. Okay. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can use, now you can use the scroll wheel and turn it, and you can see that will zoom in and that will zoom out. You're going to do a lot of zooming, a lot of panning, and a lot of rotating. So get kind of used to these. So what I want you to do now is you've got this part. I'm going to pause here. You are going to play with right drag, scroll wheel drag, zoom wheel. Okay, go try it now. I wanted to point out this view cube up here in the upper right corner. You can see it's got 3 axes. It has a Z-axis, and that's the blue color. A red axis is going sort of down and to the right, and there's a green axis in there. It's kind of going up to the right. I'm going to rotate this around so you can see that those axes move. So the center of this, or the origin point here, there's an origin point, and you can see it right over here to the left of the part. That dot there represents the origin. And so, and that's represented by this point here. So we'll play around with that origin point here a little bit, but I just wanted to point out that that's what this cube does. And that cube, it tracks, and it allows you to go find specific views. If I want to look at the part for the front, for example, I can click on front. If I want to look at it from the top, I can click on that. And if I want to see it from the right, I can click on that. It will track wherever the orientation is, and it moves around fairly easily. Little cube here that has labeled camera and render options. And if you click on that, it has a bunch of stuff in it, but the top 3 will show you various standardized views. Isometric will always show you kind of in equal portions, the top, the front, and the right. I use that a lot. So if you're trying to get back to a specific orientation, that's a handy tool to use. So that cube up there, you can use it to, by clicking on things up here, you can play with it a little bit, figure out different ways to view things. If you get lost or you want to always have a standard one to go back with, I would go with isometric. That's the one that I always use. Okay, so let's move on and talk about mates. A mate is a relationship between 2 parts. We only have one part at the moment, but we'll solve that here in just a sec. But I wanted to show you that mates are located in an assembly. There are no mates in a part studio. They're only in assemblies. And there are 8 standard mates that we use, you will use most often. And the most common one is called the fastened mate. It's right here. And you can see them: revolute mate, slider mate, planar mate, cylindrical mate, pin slot mate, ball mate, and parallel mate. So these will establish the relationship between a couple of parts. And the relationship is based on a thing called a mate connector. And we are going to now show you real quick how to select a mate connector. So coming up here, I'm going to click on the fastened mate. You'll be doing this here in just a sec. I'm going to click on the fastened mate, and it brings up this little dialog here. It has a name. It has a mate type. We selected fastened, but it turns out the same little dialog works on all of the different mate types. Okay, so we'll stick with fastened. And it has this blue box, and it's telling me what that blue box is this is your active input. You should be going out to find a mate connector right now is really what it's asking for. And when it's a blue box like this, it really expects you to go out and click on something. Okay, so what are you going to click on? Well, we have no explicit mate connectors on this part. An explicit mate connector, we'll deal with those later. Almost everybody uses inferred mate connectors, and an inferred mate connector is based on the geometry of your part. Let me hover over this, and I'm going to show you that it is inferring, which means it is looking at analyzing the geometry of your part, trying to find everything that makes sense to be a mate connector. It's based on whatever you're hovering over at the moment. I'm currently hovering over this top plane. I could hover over this side plane down here to make things a little easier. Let's do that real quick. So here I'm hovering over this plane, a planar area here, and you can see that it has inferred some interesting things. It has inferred 4 corners, right? Because it's a rectangular shape. And then it also inferred that, well, there must be a line between the bottom right and the top right. So there's actually a line there that it has inferred as a possibility. And it also has a midpoint, okay? See the little axes system, the little coordinate system it's placing there? So you can see that the z-axis of this thing, the blue line, is sort of headed out towards you. The y-axis is currently pointing straight up, and the x-axis is pointing off to the right, okay? And that is relative to the center point there that it inferred. So as I move this around, you can see the axes are changing based on what I'm hovering over. One of the more common inferred mates is the geometric center of the part. And instead of giving you a white dot on a line, you can see it gave us a black and white target right in the center of that rectangle. And it turns out that it will infer that center based on whatever geometry that you're hovering over. For example, I'm going to go hover over this geometry over here, and you can see that it's given us that center target. See it right there in the middle of that rectangle? So that is the inferred geometric center of the part. Well, that's pretty cool. It turns out that as you move the mouse around, it's guessing for you to give you some options. On a complicated part like this, it can get a little bit messy. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to scroll this up here to this top plane. See all of those possibilities up there? If you see a bunch of possibilities and one of them is the one that you would like to pick, say, for example, the center of this hole over here, well, I would like to reach out and grab that center of that hole, but I might end up getting a whole bunch of things I didn't really want. So what I can do is, if I see something I want, I can hold down my shift key, and the shift key tells the program to stop updating the list of possibilities and just go with what you currently have. And so you can see I can reach over here now. I'm holding down the shift key and I can reach out and grab one of these. And again, see the little coordinate system that it's setting up there? Okay. What makes sense for this, for a circle, you'll always see the center point is always the center. Okay. For a radius, let's zoom in on this. Here I'm sneaking up on this radius. So I'm going to let up on the shift key real quick. So here we've selected a radius. Now I'm holding down the shift key again. The radius has a center point and two endpoints with an arc in between them, or a center point arc. Very common, a geometric shape. Okay, and so I can select the center point. I can select the endpoints here, right? Letting up on the shift key, come over here and select the a new face. So this that arc, this arc is actually the top of a partial cylinder. So if I hover over the cylinder, now you can see that it has selected the sidewall there, and you can see that it selected a top, a middle, and a bottom as a potential. I'm holding down the shift key again, by the way. I'm going to let up on that. Here's a cylinder over here. It again, it doesn't have the endpoints, but it does have a top, a middle, and a bottom. So I could, I'm holding down that shift key. So anytime I hold down the shift key, it preserves whatever options are available to me and allows me to select one. All right. So you're going to go play with that first in just a sec, but I did want to show you what happens when you do select something. I'm going to come over and if I sneak up on a circle or sneak up on any shape, it will, the closer you get, it will decide that you're really going for that circle, or I'm really going for that this line over here, or maybe I'm going for this big circle up here. And see how it automatically just decides that that's where you're headed. So you don't always have to use the shift key. If you know you're going for a circle, if you sneak up on it from the outside, you can click on it, okay? If you go over the line, it will switch to the cylinder, and see how the target shifted to the center down there? That might not be what you wanted. So be careful as you're sneaking up on things not to cross over the thing you're sneaking up on, because you may select something different, especially for circles that are parts of a whole. I'm going to sneak up on this, and I'm going to left click right now. I'm going to left click, and you can see that it left a trace of the target in there. See it here in the center? And it's this dialog box up here. I can make this a little bigger to show the whole part name. So it has told me that I have selected a mate connector on this part number, and this turns out to be the part number for this quad block. There you go. And now I can go off and I need to go select another part. Turns out we don't have another part to select at the moment, but we'll deal with that in a sec. If it turns out that I didn't intend to select that, but I did that anyway, I can come up here into the mate connectors box and I can delete it. See that little red X there? I can delete that red X and now I can go select a new mate, okay? Two other things I want to show you. This arc out here, you can see there's an arc. It has two endpoints and it has a center point. Endpoint, endpoint, center point. See it there? Now, if I come over here and I hover over the arc and I go too far, now I'm over this partial cylindrical face, it will infer that it's a partial cylinder. You'll notice that the endpoints are now gone and it's allowing me to select a top, a middle, or a bottom of this cylindrical face. The last thing I want to show you is if I sneak up on a line, you'll get something that is a little bit different. If I'm going to sneak up on this point here, see that point? That point has the z-axis, the blue line, is perpendicular to the face that this mouse is hovering over, right? So this is the face here that I'm hovering over. And as I get close to that, it's giving me z-axis perpendicular to that. Now, I've led up on the shift key. Now I'm gonna come over to this line and I can actually select a line. Now check out what happened to the z-axis. The z-axis is now aligned with this line segment. I can select endpoint, middle point, endpoint, right? I'm holding down the shift key, by the way, to make this happen. And you can see that the z-axis is aligned to this. And so this trips people up sometimes when you go to mate stuff and you didn't get what you expected. So watch out for that. I'm letting up on the shift key real quick. And you can see as I switch planes, right? Now I'm hovering over the front plane. The z-axis is perpendicular to that plane. If I come up here on the top, now that same mate connector is now perpendicular to this top plane. And if I hover over the line, it's now aligned with a line segment. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go try selecting things. Try selecting a circle. There, I selected a circle. That seemed to work pretty good. And you can see that the mate it gave me. I want you to delete the mate and I come do a different circle. So now I'm not doing a circle, I'm doing this cylinder. And notice that the cylinder, the axis of the cylinder is pointing down. I don't know, it is what it is. If I did that same mate and snuck up at it from the circle, see how the z-axis points up? And if I did the inside of the hole, it points down. So keep that in mind when we actually go to play with some mates. Realize that that blue line is what's going to align the mate connector. We have ways of fixing that later, but I just wanted you to see that there was a difference there. All right, so if I select that, I can come up here and delete it. So go try that right now. Let's actually try mating something. So I'm going to delete this or close this fasten box. I'm just going to go insert and I'm going to go over here to standard content. And standard content is is where you find fasteners, nuts, bolts, screws, those sorts of things. This is a form that you can fill out. It starts out, you go top to bottom with it. The standard that we're going to use, I want you to click on this. The two ones that you should really be focused on are ANSI inch or ISO. So ANSI inch for us ugly Americans, that's like a quarter inch, half inch, and then the numbered screws and such, okay? ISO is metric. And so it uses the metric system. And so the diameters are things like M4, M meaning metric, 4 millimeters, okay? You can select bolts and screws and stuff. We want to select bolts. Let's go, you can select what kind of bolt. You can select like a standard hex head bolt. We're going to go with something called a socket head screw. It's down here at the bottom. We're going to use a socket head button screw. We're going to select M4. That's the diameter that we want. Thread length, let's use a 10 millimeter length. Stainless steel is fine. So I want you to do an insert, and that is going to give you a little representation of a screw here. And I'm gonna come over here, I'm just gonna left click once, okay? Cool. Now go click on other documents. We are going to insert this part right here. It's 1120-0009-0240. Whoops, it's quite a bit bigger. So I'm going to scroll. I'm scrolling out with the wheel. Okay. And I'm just going to plop that right here for now. Here's what you're going to do. Go do it right now. So I'm going to hit the green check mark. That will cause all of that to take effect. So now let's go meet some stuff, huh? And so I'm going to hover over Fasten Meet. And when it hovers over it, you can see it's going to remove all degrees of freedom between two entities. That means that when you use a fastened mate, no motion will be possible. Okay? So, well, that makes a little bit of sense since they're fastened together, is what you do with fasteners, actually. You do this a lot with fasteners. You can see this fastener has a built-in mate connector on it, and that is used by the tools, by the insert tool, to automatically select a mate. So we can also select that mate if we want. But I'm going to show you different ways of selecting mates on a cylindrical thing here, okay? So the basic way to use a fastened mate is I'm going to click on fastened mate, and I need to select what is going to mate with this hole. I'm going to use this hole right here, and I'm going to click on it. So there's a mate connector there. And then I believe that the center of this circle, which is the underside of the head of the bolt, is going to mate to that. So I'm going to click there. And oh, look at that. All right, some weird stuff happened. What the heck happened there? I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, and you can see one of the mate connectors is the z-axis is headed up and a little bit to the left, and I'll make it more pronounced. It's headed up and left, and the other z-axis is headed down and right. This is super common when you're mating stuff. If that isn't what you wanted, I'm going to use this little flip primary axis button and watch what happens to the axes here. Ready? I'm going to click this, and now they are aligned. See how they're aligned now? And the parts moved around, and so you'll have to scroll this around a little bit. I'll show you how to fix that in just a sec. But see how they're now aligned? And that is what we really wanted. You're going to use flip primary axis all of the time, okay? So I'm going to hit the solve button. And there, we have now mated this part to this part. Okay, notice how this thing is moving all over the place? It's kind of a pain in the butt. So when a pro tip for you, there are a couple of ways of doing this. For right now, I'd like you to hover over this quad block part, right click it once. So just right click and release, and see where it says fix. I'm going to fix it. And what that means is that this part is now fixed. I can no longer drag it. See if I grab it and drag it, and see it's giving me the little red arrow, and that little emblem right there, see that little thing right there? Says that part is fixed. I can also see that it's fixed up here. See that little icon there? Means that part is fixed. So it can't be moved. Very cool. There is our first mate. I want you to go try that. Okay, so I'm going to hit the red check mark. So we have, look at the assembly here. So what do we have? We have parts. This is a list of the parts that are available. And if I scroll out, and as I hover over each one, you can see it highlights it a little bit. Okay. And actually, if I click on them, they will highlight. So there's that big U channel. There's a button head screw. And here's this part. Notice my mouse. See, it's got the mouse has that little 3 next to it. That's telling me I have selected 3 parts out here. Okay. Remember the notion of clicking on nothing? I'm going to click once with my left mouse button, and that unselects all of those things. Below that are the mates that we've done so far. So far, we've done one. It's telling us that it is a fastened mate. Yeah, fastened mate. Turns out you can edit these things. So let's edit one. Among the things we can do, we can actually change the mate type. And so this should be fun. What are our mate types? Well, we have a fastened mate. That's what we have. Okay. Removes all degrees of freedom between two entities. All right. Hey, what's this one? Revolute mate. A revolute mate allows rotation about the z-axis. The first selection serves as the rotational point, and the second is the stationary point. Okay, sounds good. Let's do that. So if I go to our type and I click down on it, I can change this to be a revolute. Okay. And well, what changed? Well, I've changed the type. It looks the same. If I want to see how this thing could potentially move, I'm going to hit this play button. It will animate the degrees of freedom. See that? So that's how this thing can move. If I go back to the fastened mate real quick, here's fastened. It doesn't move at all. So that button doesn't actually do anything. So it's doing exactly what it's supposed to. It's animated all degrees of freedom. There are none, so nothing happened. Let's go back to that revolute thing again. And I'm going to play with this. Hey, so why is the big part moving and not the screw? Well, if I hover over this thing again, the first selection serves as the rotational point and the second as the stationary point. There's a clue there. I think that means is that if I had selected the bolt first and selected the stationary point second, it should work. Now, it turns out you can reorder these with this little up and down arrow. If I hit that little up and down arrow, and I can drag, these little drag handles allowed me to change the order of these things. Done reordering. So now when I hit the degrees of freedom, you can see that the screw is turning because the second part is the stationary part. See that? See how the screw is turning? I can hit the green check mark, and now we have edited this, and you can see the mate features have changed to a revolute mate. This is called a spin down control. It's the greater than symbol. If you click on that, you can actually highlight the individual mate connectors, right? You can actually edit these too. This is a little bit more advanced, but in case you double click on one and you're editing a mate connector, you didn't really want to do that. We'll deal with this later. So if I double click that revolute one, I can change this to something else. Let's go with a cylindrical mate. So I have under mate type, select cylindrical. Now hit the animate button. There we go. So now it's showing me that, and watch it. See that this is turning. If you can see it, watch these axes when I do that one more time. It's rotating and translating at the same time. Fair enough. Okay. Hey, there are a couple other checkboxes down here. Limits and simulation connection. You can ignore those for now. We're going to play with limits a little bit later. Okay. Hey, what else can we pick? So here's a revolute mate, slider mate. What does that do? Allows translation along the x-axis. Sounds very similar. In fact, you can see it's trying to show you what it is. It's trying to show you that it goes up and down along the z-axis, where this one is trying to show you that it rotates around the z-axis. And the cylindrical mate goes up and down and rotates at the same time. So this is similar. So if I make this guy into a slider mate, I would expect this to go up and down, but not rotate. Let's see what happens. Yep. Up and down, not rotating. I'm going to put this guy back to being a fastened mate, and I'm going to hit the green check mark. Would you like to go play with that? Go do that right now. Okay, so let's talk about some other things that you need to know about mating. Here is a deep U channel, and what we're going to do is we're going to mate this part onto this part. So at the moment, none of these parts are currently fixed, and so I'm going to recommend that you do something. When parts aren't fixed, they can move around. So like you can drag all of these things around. And oftentimes what I find is I like to pick one component out of my assembly and fix it. And what that does is that tells the computer not to move it. So I'm selecting this large U channel. I'm right clicking once and I'm going to click on fix. And that is going to hold that in place. Okay. And you'll find that if you have one thing in your assembly fixed, it is much, much easier to work with. Okay, so do that, right? So right click and fix it, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to mate this quad block into the end of this part here, okay? So I am going to do a fastened mate. Why am I going to choose a fastened mate? Well, in general, unless I have a real good reason for something to be able to move, like a rotating shaft or something that's going to slide, I generally use fastened mates. The fastened mate causes the program to be able to recognize that no motion is required, and it tends to make it run a little faster. When fastening something, I'm thinking about, well, how does this assemble? And I think what I'd like to do is I'd like for this hole here to line up with a hole on this part, and they should touch each other. And that way, when they're properly aligned and touching, that is how they are actually going to get mated. I am going to select the center of this screw hole. So I'm going to sneak up on it, and I'm going to click on it. And you can see mate connector on the quad block. And I would like to move that up to this hole up here. A few things to point out. It embedded itself. So a little debugging is required here. The other thing I'm going to point out is I may have gotten this backwards. So let's see what happens. Or the Z-axis has aligned fine. I'm okay with that. But the orientation of the rest of the part doesn't seem right. And you can see it sort of embedded itself. This is a thing that happens a lot in CAD when you go to assemble things. It doesn't know what orientation you actually wanted it, and it can occupy the same space at the same time. So I would actually like to reorient this part so that so one of the things I can do is I can reorient the secondary axis. What does that mean? I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit while I do that. See that these secondary axes are actually the Y and Z. If I hit this reorient, watch what happens to this part. It's reorienting itself like that. And I can actually keep clicking this, and it will move it 90 degrees at a time. All right. So that seems reasonable. And I think this is the orientation I'd like it to be in. And now I'm realizing, oh, hey, dang, I selected the wrong hole. And that happens sometimes. Actually, I did it on purpose so that I could show you how to deal with this. But I thought I was going to associate it with this hole, but I've now realized I would actually like to move it down. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you that I can reorient the secondary axis, and then I can realize that I actually want to mate it to this hole down here. So I'm going to go up into our mate connector list. I'm going to delete that selection, and I'm going to reselect down here. And now I can look at it, and I see that that's kind of what I had in mind. Okay. I think I mentioned it before, but just to point out that it has moved just these two parts together, and it left the rest of the assembly, this screw, off in the corner somewhere. So to move everything to where it's supposed to be, I'm going to hit solve. And now I've got that screw is now up there. Now I'm going to hit the green check mark. And there you go. So that is how I was able to, you can see it is a fastened mate. And that fastened mate will not allow this part to move in relation to this hole. So it'll keep this orientation always. So why don't you go try that? Go do that right now. If you've done that, I want to show you a little bit more about these mates and how they're sort of managed. So again, in the assembly window here, we have three parts. We have the quad block, we have this screw, we have that U channel, right? So we're going to delete this screw real quick, and I just want to show you what happens. This screw has mates on it, and I don't know which of the two fasten mates involve that screw. So what I can do is I can actually right click once on that part, and I can say show mates. And when I do that, it will put in bold all of the mates that exist on that screw. See it here? In order to get ready for the next section, in addition to removing the screw, we're going to delete that channel there, and we are going to end up just back to our original part. Now what I'd like you to do is to use the view cube, the camera and rendering options. I'd like you to put us in isometric mode and see how our part, which is no longer fixed, by the way, if yours is fixed, turn the fix off. I'm going to drag this up, and I'm going to kind of make it look like this. So that was a left drag. and we're in isometric mode, and that is where you should be. We should have just the one part. Now, we're going to do one more kind of odd fastened mate, and there's a reason for this. Sometimes I would like the top, front, and right to be make more sense against this part. What I'm going to do is we're actually going to fasten this part to the origin. And this is fairly useful when you're putting together large assemblies and you want to be able to look at, if you want top, front, and right to actually align with things. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to do a fastened mate, and the first mate connector I'm going to use. So I want to be an isometric here. I would like it so that the top, you see the top there, so you can see the red axis is headed down and right, green axis up and left, up and right, and the Z axis is actually pointing straight up. It's supposed to be blue, but it's kind of hidden by that orange thing. So I'm going to click on that anyway, and there it is, right? So Z is pointed up. So what I'd like to do is I would actually like to mate this to this part. So I'm going to sneak up on the center of this and click there, and there you go. So we've just aligned the top of the part and the X and Y axis, and so we should be good there. And I'm going to hit OK. And the reason that I did that, I'm going to close this dialog box here. Now I can click on top, and I'm going to call that our top view. And here's our front view, right? And so now what we've done is we've taken this part, we've fastened it to the origin so it actually cannot move. I can't click and drag this guy anymore. I don't have to fix it, right? But a lot of times I like to have one part that has been fastened, one part in an assembly that's been fastened to the origin. It's kind of a handy little trick of the trade, especially as we start to build a bigger and bigger robot. I'd like I'd like to be able to use the top, front, right, and left views. So you can look over here, see that little icon there? Notice that it's different than the previous fasten ones. That little, I guess, pin or little flag thing is indicating that that is actually attached to the origin. Okay, and turns out that you can rename things. And so a lot of times when I do that fasten to the origin thing, I'll oftentimes come and right click on that mate and do a rename. And that way I can find it easy. And I'll call it fasten to origin. Okay. And so you can actually name your mates, which can be handy. And we're going to use that a little bit later. Go do that now. I would like you to go figure out how to fasten your quad block to the origin so that when you click on the top, you get you get that view. Go do that right now. Well, this seems like a pretty reasonable place to switch to the next video. So I'm going to end this one here. Just looking forward, what we're working on towards is actually building this robot right here. We just learned how to do a lot of mates. We've learned how to select mate features. We've learned how to use the view cube. We learned how to fix things. We learned how to fix things to the origin. We learned a little bit about inserting fasteners, and generally did a pretty deep dive into selecting mates and inferred mates. So that gives us a really solid footing to start the next section. And so I look forward to seeing you in the next video.